Act 1, 2:17 a.m. The Discovery. The email notification pulled me from sleep like a fire alarm. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, squinting at the brightness. My company email, server notification. The subject line made my stomach drop. Urgent. Purchase order execution. Authorization required. I sat up, my wife stirring beside me but not waking. My hands were already shaking as I opened it. Purchase order number A7743. Vendor, Stratton Technical Solutions. Amount, $547,000. Payment method, company credit line. Authorized by Marcus Hayes, CEO. Marcus Hayes. That's me. Except I didn't authorize this. I'd never heard of Stratton Technical Solutions. And I sure as hell didn't approve pulling over $500,000 from our joint credit line at 2:17 in the morning. The approval signature at the bottom was mine, my actual digital signature, the one I'd used on hundreds of legitimate documents. Someone had access to it. Someone had used it. And that someone had exactly one name that made sense. Derek Chen, my business partner of 10 years. I got out of bed carefully, grabbed my laptop from the office, and went downstairs. Made coffee I wouldn't drink. Sat at the kitchen table in the dark and started digging. The purchase order was dated yesterday. The approval timestamp, 11:47 p.m. last night while I'd been asleep. The funds were scheduled to transfer at 9 a.m. this morning, in less than 7 hours. I logged into our company banking portal. The credit line showed $1.2 million available. By 9 a.m., it would show $653,000. And we had payroll due in 3 days, $180,000 for our 32 employees. This wasn't a mistake. This was systematic. I pulled up my email archives and started searching. Found the original contract with Stratton Technical Solutions buried in a folder I didn't recognize, dated 3 weeks ago. The contract was for enterprise software infrastructure upgrades, vague enough to sound legitimate, specific enough to justify the cost. Derek's signature was on it. Mine was too. Forged, obviously, but sophisticated enough that our bank wouldn't question it. I sat there in the dark, staring at the screen, and felt something cold settle into my chest. Not anger yet, just clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you realize someone you trusted completely has been planning to destroy you. My phone buzzed. Text from Derek. Early meeting tomorrow. Can we push our 10 a.m. to 11? Need to finalize Q3 projections. I stared at that message for a long time. He was acting normal, casual, like he wasn't about to steal $500,000 from our company in 7 hours. I typed back, no problem. 11 works. See you then. Then I opened a new browser tab and started making calls. At 2:30 a.m., I called our lawyer. At 2:45, I called our forensic accountant. At 3:15, I called the bank's fraud department. By 4 a.m., I'd set up a meeting for 7:30 a.m., 90 minutes before Derek's transaction would process. By 5 a.m., I'd started copying every financial document I could access to an external drive. By 6 a.m., I'd drafted an emergency board resolution. Derek thought he was robbing me while I slept. What he didn't know was that I'd been awake for 4 hours, building a cage around him with paperwork and lawyers.
This was going to be a very interesting day.
Act 2, the foundation, the backstory. I should tell you how we got here. How a friendship that started in a cramped apartment turned into a business worth $15 million. How the person I trusted most in the world became someone I was preparing to destroy. Derek and I met 11 years ago at a tech startup accelerator in Austin. I was 26, fresh out of a failed attempt at building a project management tool that nobody wanted. He was 32, 3 years removed from a sales VP position at a Fortune 500 company he'd quit because, in his words, "I'm tired of making other people rich." We were assigned to the same mentor group. I had the technical skills, could code for 18 hours straight, understood user experience intuitively, saw patterns in data that other people missed. Derek had everything I didn't: Charisma, sales instincts, the ability to walk into a room full of skeptical investors and walk out with a term sheet. "You build it, I'll sell it," he'd said over cheap beer at a dive bar on 6th Street. 60-40 split. You get the extra 10 because without the product, I've got nothing to sell. I'd laughed. That's the first time a business guy has admitted that. "I'm not a business guy. I'm a hustler who happens to be good with spreadsheets." He extended his hand. "Partners?" "Partners." That handshake created TechBridge Solutions, cloud-based project management software designed specifically for construction companies, a niche nobody was serving well. I built the platform in 4 months, working out of Derek's living room while he slept on the couch and cold-called every construction firm in Texas. Our first client was a small residential builder in Houston, $200 a month. Derek celebrated like we'd closed a $1 million deal. "This is it, Marcus," he'd said, ordering us an expensive dinner we couldn't afford. "This is the first domino. By this time next year, we'll have 50 clients." He was wrong. By that time, we had 130. Derek was a machine. He could walk onto a construction site in steel-toed boots and a hard hat, talk to a foreman about poor schedules and change orders, then pivot seamlessly into explaining how our software would save them 15 hours a week on documentation. He made believers out of skeptics. I was the architect. I'd spend weeks perfecting a feature that would save users 30 seconds per task, because those 30 seconds multiplied across thousands of tasks meant hours saved, which meant money saved, which meant renewals and referrals. We complemented each other perfectly. He'd close deals I never could have landed. I'd build features he never could have imagined. The company grew steadily, not explosive startup growth, but sustainable, profitable growth. By year 3, we'd moved into real office space. By year 5, we had 20 employees. By year 7, we'd hit $8 million in annual recurring revenue. By year 10, we'd crossed 15 million with 32 employees and clients across 14 states. We'd made it. Built something real from nothing. Derek had a house in Westlake, drove a Tesla, took his family to Hawaii twice a year. I had a comfortable life, a wife who didn't worry about money anymore, and the satisfaction of building something that actually helped people. But somewhere in years 8 and 9, things started shifting. Small things at first. Derek started pushing for faster growth, aggressive expansion into new markets. I wanted to solidify what we had, improve the product, maintain our reputation for reliability. "We're leaving money on the table," he'd argue in board meetings. "We could be at 30 million in 2 years if we just scaled faster." "We could also implode if we scale too fast," I'd counter. "Remember Zenefits? WeWork? Growth for growth's sake kills companies." "You're too cautious, Marcus." "Always have been." "And you're too aggressive." "Always have been. That's why we work. Except we were working less and less well. By year 10, the cracks were obvious. Derek started making decisions without consulting me. Hiring people I hadn't interviewed, signing contracts I hadn't reviewed. When I'd object, he'd wave it off. "I'm the CEO, you're the CTO. Stay in your lane." "We're co-founders, equal partners. There are no lanes. There are when one of us is actually focused on revenue." The fights got more frequent. The trust eroded. But I told myself it was normal. Growing pains, the stress of running a business, the challenge of transitioning from startup to established company. Then about 6 months ago, I noticed financial reports were coming late. Derek would miss our monthly review meetings, rescheduling last minute. When I'd ask direct questions about expenses or cash flow, he'd get defensive. "Why are you suddenly questioning everything I do?" "I'm not questioning everything. I'm asking about a $75,000 line item labeled consulting fees that I don't remember approving." "That's the growth consulting firm I brought in, the one I told you about." "You told me about a $15,000 engagement, not 75. It expanded. They're good. Trust me." But I didn't trust him. Not anymore. 3 months ago, I discovered Derek had changed the passwords on several key systems: our banking portal, our payroll software, our contract management system. When I confronted him, he acted like it was a security measure. We got a phishing attempt last month. I upgraded our protocols by locking me out of systems I need access to. You have access. The new passwords are in the shared password manager, except they weren't. I had to reset them myself, which Derek would have known about, which meant he'd know I was checking. That's when I started keeping my own records, copying financial statements, documenting unusual transactions, building my own audit trail. I didn't know what Derek was planning, but I knew something was wrong. And now, at 2:17 a.m., with a forged purchase order for $500,000 on my laptop screen, I knew exactly what was wrong. My partner, my friend, the guy who'd slept on my couch while we built this company, was stealing from me. The question was, what was I going to do about it? Act 3, The Trap Within the Trap. I walked into our office at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes before my emergency meeting. Derek's Tesla wasn't in the parking lot yet. He usually rolled in around 9:30, answering emails from coffee shops and claiming he did his best thinking outside the office. Our lawyer, Jennifer Park, was already waiting in the conference room with Martin Rhodes, the forensic accountant I'd called, at 2:45 a.m. Martin looked exhausted but alert, laptop open, multiple manila folders spread across the table. "Show me everything," I said, closing the door. Martin turned his laptop toward me. "I've been in your system since 3:30 a.m. Marcus, this is bad. Really bad." The screen showed a spreadsheet with highlighted entries going back 8 months. Dozens of transactions I'd never seen. Payments to consulting firms that didn't exist. Equipment purchases from vendors I'd never heard of. Professional services that were never rendered. Total amount diverted, $1.8 million over 8 months, Martin said. All of it authorized under your digital signature, routed through shell companies that ultimately trace back to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. My stomach dropped. $1.8 million? The $547,000 purchase order you caught was just the latest one, and the largest. He's been escalating. Jennifer leaned forward. "Marcus, this is textbook embezzlement. But here's the problem. Legally, your signatures are on all of it, unless we can prove they're forged." "They're forged," I interrupted. "I never authorized any of this." "I believe you. But proving it in court? That's harder. Your digital signature has been used correctly on hundreds of legitimate documents. A judge is going to ask why you didn't notice $1.8 million disappearing over 8 months. Because Derek controlled the financial reporting. He's CEO. I trusted him to handle that side while I focused on product." "And that's going to be his defense," Jennifer said, "that you knew, that you were complicit, or at the very least that you were negligent in your oversight responsibilities." I sat down heavily. "So even though he's stealing from me, I'm liable?" "Potentially. You're co-owners, equal partners. The company credit line is joint. If this becomes a lawsuit, it gets messy fast. He can claim these were legitimate business expenses you later disagreed with. It becomes he said. Martin jumped in. "Unless we catch him in the act. The $547,000 transaction processes at 9 a.m. If we can prove you didn't authorize it, and we can freeze the transaction before it completes, we have him on wire fraud. That's federal." I looked at my watch. 7:52 a.m. 68 minutes until the transaction processed. "What's the play?" I asked. Jennifer pulled out a document. "Emergency board resolution. We call an emergency board meeting, right now, before Derek arrives. As co-founder and CTO, you have the authority to call it. We present evidence of unauthorized transactions, pass a resolution freezing all company accounts pending a forensic audit, and remove Derek's authorization to make financial decisions." "Can we do that?" He's CEO. You're equal partners, equal board members, and you have majority support. She gestured to Martin. Martin is technically a board observer as our accountant. He'll vote with you. That's 2-1. Derek will fight this. Of course he will. But by the time he can fight it legally, we'll have frozen the accounts, blocked the transaction, and started a full investigation. He'll be on defense instead of offense. I thought about Derek, about the years we'd spent building this company, about the nights we'd celebrated wins and commiserated over losses, about his kids, who called me Uncle Marcus, about the $1.8 million he'd stolen while looking me in the eye and calling me paranoid. Do it, I said. We drafted the board resolution in 12 minutes. Jennifer walked me through every line, explaining the legal implications. Martin prepared a summary of the fraudulent transactions, not all of them, just enough to justify immediate action. At 8:15 a.m., we officially convened an emergency board meeting. Jennifer recorded it on video for legal documentation. This emergency meeting of the TechBridge Solutions Board is called to order, I said, reading from Jennifer's script. Present are Marcus Hayes, co-founder and CTO, and Martin Rhodes, board observer and company accountant. Due to the emergency nature of this meeting, co-founder and CEO Derek Chen has not been notified per Emergency Bylaws Section 7.3. I looked at Martin. Martin, please present your findings. He did, calmly, methodically, showing transaction after transaction, fake vendors, forged signatures, money flowing to offshore accounts. When he finished, I felt sick. Seeing it all laid out like that, the scope of the betrayal was staggering. Based on these findings, I read from Jennifer's script, I move to immediately freeze all company financial accounts, revoke CEO financial authorization, and initiate a full forensic audit. All in favor? Aye, I said. Aye, Martin said. Motion passes 2-0, Jennifer said. Meeting adjourned at 8:47 a.m. We'd done it. In 32 minutes, we'd legally stripped Derek of financial control and frozen the accounts. The $547,000 transaction wouldn't process at 9 a.m. It would bounce, and Derek would know something was wrong. My phone buzzed. Text from Derek. Running late. Be there by 11:30. Sorry, man. I didn't respond. Jennifer looked at me. Now comes the hard part. When he walks in here at 11:30, he's going to know something's wrong. The transaction will have bounced. He'll be getting calls from the bank. You need to be ready for whatever comes next. What do you think he'll do? Deny everything. Claim you're paranoid. Maybe accuse you of trying to steal the company from him. People caught in fraud don't admit guilt. They attack. So I let him attack? No. You record him. Every word. Let him lie. Let him threaten. Let him reveal himself. With Martin's forensic evidence and Derek's own words, we build an airtight case. Then we don't just remove him from the company, we pursue criminal charges. I thought about that. Criminal charges. Federal wire fraud. My business partner, my friend, going to prison. He stole $1.8 million from our company, I said quietly. From me. From our employees. He forged my signature dozens of times. He's been planning this for months. Yes. Then let's finish it. At 9:03 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I put it on speaker. Mr. Hayes? This is Sarah Chen from First National Bank. I'm calling about a transaction that just failed to process. A purchase order for $547,000. The account has been frozen pending an investigation. Do you know anything about this? Yes, I said, looking at Jennifer, who was nodding. I'm aware. That transaction was unauthorized. We've initiated a fraud investigation. Silence on the other end. Then, Mr. Hayes, I also have Derek Chen on the line. Hold on. Muffled voices. He's saying he authorized that transaction as CEO, and you're interfering with company business. Put him on, I said. Click. Marcus, what the fuck is going on? Derek's voice tight with barely controlled anger. Emergency board meeting this morning. We discovered unauthorized transactions. All accounts are frozen pending a full audit. Unauthorized? I'm the CEO. I authorized every transaction, including the 1.8 million you've stolen over the past 8 months. Dead silence. Derek, I said. His voice, when it came back, was different, colder, calculated. I don't know what you think you found, but you're making a huge mistake. Those were all legitimate business expenses. Payments to shell companies that don't exist, fake equipment purchases, funds routed to offshore accounts. You're paranoid, Marcus. You always have been. This is exactly why I've been making these decisions without you. You can't see the big picture. You're still thinking like a developer instead of like a CEO. You're not the CEO anymore. As of 8:47 a.m., you've been removed from financial authority pending investigation. Another silence. Then, you can't do that. I just did. Emergency board resolution, 2-0. There are only 2 board members. You can't hold a board meeting without me. Martin Rhodes is a board observer. He has voting rights in emergency situations per our bylaws. You wrote those bylaws, Derek. Remember? I could almost hear him processing this, looking for the angle, the loophole, the way out. This is a coup, he said finally. You're trying to steal the company from me. No, I'm stopping you from stealing it from us. I built this company. While you were in your office coding, I was out closing deals, bringing in revenue, making us successful. And while you were bringing in revenue, you were siphoning off $1.8 million into your pocket. Prove it. I will. See you at 11:30. I hung up. Jennifer was smiling. He's going to come in swinging. Be ready. I'm ready, I said, but I wasn't. Not really. Because when Derek walked into that office in 2 hours, it wasn't just going to be a business confrontation. It was going to be the end of a friendship, the death of a partnership that had defined a decade of my life, and I was about to burn it all down. Act 4, The Revelation. Derek walked into the office at 11:42 a.m., 12 minutes late. He wasn't alone. He'd brought his own lawyer, some corporate attorney in an expensive suit who looked like he billed $800 an hour. Marcus, Derek said, his voice cold and professional. This is Robert Kaufman, my attorney. I think we need to have a serious conversation about what happened this morning. I gestured to the conference room where Jennifer and Martin were waiting. Agreed. Let's talk. We sat on opposite sides of the table. Derek and his lawyer on one side. Me, Jennifer, and Martin on the other. Like a negotiation, like a divorce. Before we begin, Robert said, pulling out a document, I want to make it clear that this morning's actions were illegal. You cannot hold a board meeting without notifying all board members. The resolution you passed is invalid. Jennifer didn't even blink. Emergency Bylaws Section 7.3 allows for immediate action in cases of suspected financial malfeasance without prior notice to the accused party. Mr. Chen wrote that section himself when we incorporated. Robert's confident expression flickered. He looked at Derek, who wouldn't meet his eyes. Regardless, Robert continued, these accusations of fraud are baseless. My client has full authorization as CEO to make financial decisions. Show them, I said to Martin. Martin turned his laptop around, showed them the spreadsheet, the fake vendors, the offshore accounts, the trail of money that led directly to Derek. Robert studied the screen, his expression going from confident to concerned to carefully neutral. Derek stared at the spreadsheet for a long moment. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. You think you're so smart, Marcus. You always have, but you're missing the big picture. Again. What big picture? Those aren't fraudulent transactions. They're investments in expansion, in growth, in taking this company to the next level. He leaned forward. Everything I did for TechBridge, to build us into something bigger than your small-time, play-it-safe mentality would ever allow. By stealing $1.8 million? By investing $1.8 million in opportunities you were too scared to pursue? He pulled out his own folder, slid documents across the table. Stratton Technical Solutions? That's a real company. They're building an AI integration for our platform that will triple our market value. The consulting fees? That's a growth strategy firm that's identified $50 million in acquisition opportunities. The offshore accounts? That's tax optimization that every smart company does. He sat back, confident now. You're not exposing fraud, Marcus. You're exposing your own ignorance about how real businesses scale. I looked at the documents. They were impressive, professional, detailed proposals, signed contracts, legitimate-looking invoices. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if I was wrong? What if Derek really was just aggressive about growth and I was too cautious? Then I noticed something in the Stratton Technical Solutions contract, a tiny detail in the fine print. The contract termination clause. It gave either party the right to cancel with 30 days' notice and full refund of all payments. I looked up at Derek. When did you sign this Stratton contract? 3 weeks ago, like the date says. And when were you planning to tell me about it? I told you about it last month. You weren't interested. No, Derek. You mentioned an AI integration idea. You didn't mention spending $547,000 on it, because I knew you'd say no. Like you always do. He looked at his lawyer, then at me. This is exactly the problem, Marcus. You're holding us back. So I did what I needed to do to move us forward. I slid the contract back to him, pointing at the termination clause. Then you won't mind if we exercise this 30-day cancellation and get our $547,000 back? Derek's face went carefully blank. That wouldn't be smart. We'd lose the development work they've already done. What development work? The contract was signed 3 weeks ago. The first milestone payment isn't due until week 6. They haven't done any work yet. Silence. So let's call them right now, I said, pulling out my phone. Let's get our money back. And if the AI integration is really as valuable as you say, we'll restart the project with proper board approval. Derek's lawyer jumped in. That's not necessary. My client is willing to restructure. Call them, I repeated, looking at Derek. Unless there's a reason you don't want me to. Derek stared at me. I stared back. Finally, he spoke. You're making a mistake. Probably. But it's my mistake to make. As co-founder and equal partner, I kept my phone out. The number's right here in the contract. Should I call or will you? Derek's jaw clenched. Then quietly, they won't refund it. Why not? The contract says, because Stratton Technical Solutions doesn't exist. His voice was flat now, dead. It's a shell company I created. The money went into a business account I control. I was going to use it to fund an expansion into the Midwest market. My own expansion, my own company, competing directly with TechBridge. The words hung in the air like a bomb. You were going to use our money to build a competitor? I said quietly. I was going to use money I earned to build something you were too afraid to build. I've brought in 90% of our revenue for 10 years while you sat in your office perfecting features nobody asked for. I built this company, Marcus. I deserve more than 50%. So you were stealing your way to a buyout? I was taking what's mine. His lawyer put a hand on his arm. Derek, stop talking. But Derek couldn't stop. 10 years of resentment was pouring out now. You know what your problem is? He said. You think building the product makes you special? You think your code is some kind of magic? But the product is commodity, Marcus. What I do, closing deals, managing clients, bringing in revenue, that's what actually matters. You could be replaced by any decent developer. What I do, that's irreplaceable. I let him talk. Let him incriminate himself further. The recording device in my pocket was catching every word. So you forged my signature on dozens of transactions, created fake vendors, and routed 1.8 million through shell companies because you felt undervalued? I took what I earned. You stole what you earned. There's a difference, and now you're going to face the consequences. I looked at his lawyer. Your client just confessed to wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement on a recording device. I'm willing to offer one chance to make this right. Derek signs over his shares to me for $1, walks away permanently, and we don't press criminal charges. Derek's face went purple. I'll burn this company to the ground before I let you steal it from me. You already tried that. You failed. This is your only way out that doesn't involve federal prison, his lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Derek shook his head violently, whispered back. They argued quietly for a moment. Finally, Robert spoke. We'll need time to consider. You have until end of business today, I interrupted. After that, we file a police report and turn over all evidence to federal prosecutors. Your choice. I stood up, and Jennifer and Martin followed. We left Derek and his lawyer sitting in the conference room. As we walked out, I heard Derek say, his voice broken, How did this happen? How did you beat me? I stopped at the door, looked back. You taught me, Derek. 10 years ago, you told me, always have a contingency plan. I just had a better one than you did. Then I closed the door. Act 5. The Fallout and Final Thought. Derek signed the papers at 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before our deadline. His lawyer had spent the day reviewing the evidence and clearly explained that his options were simple. Sign over the company and walk away free, or face federal wire fraud charges with a near-certain conviction. He signed, handed over his shares for $1, agreed to a lifetime non-compete that prevented him from working in our industry. Walked out of the office he'd worked in for 10 years with a banker's box of personal belongings and nothing else. I watched him leave from the conference room window, watched him put the box in his Tesla, watched him sit in the driver's seat for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel, not moving. Then he drove away. Jennifer stood next to me. You won. Yeah. Why don't you sound happy about it? I thought about that. Because 10 years ago, that man slept on my couch while we built this company. He was at my wedding. I was at his daughter's baptism. We weren't just business partners. We were friends. Friends don't steal $1.8 million from each other. No, they don't. I turned away from the window. But that doesn't make this feel like a victory. Over the next few weeks, I had to tell the story over and over. To our employees, all 32 of them, gathered in the office, worried about their jobs. I assured them the company was stable, that Derek's theft hadn't touched operating capital, that everyone's positions were secure. To our clients. Several of them called, concerned about leadership changes. I explained that Derek had left the company due to differences in strategic vision and that I would be taking over as sole CEO. Most of them were relieved. They'd worked primarily with our account managers anyway. To our investors, we had 3 minor angel investors from our early days. I briefed them on the situation, showed them the evidence, and assured them I'd frozen the bleeding. They were supportive, though one of them said something that stuck with me. This is why you never go into business with friends. When it ends, you lose both. To my wife, she'd known something was wrong, but not the extent of it. When I told her everything, the theft, the betrayal, the confrontation, she was quiet for a long time. Are you okay? She finally asked. I don't know. You saved the company. I destroyed a friendship. He destroyed it first. Maybe. Or maybe we both destroyed it slowly over 10 years, and this was just the final blow. She held my hand. What are you going to do now? Run the company. Alone. And that's what I did. I hired a new COO, a woman named Sarah Patel, who'd run operations for a similar SaaS company and had no interest in drama, just results. I promoted 3 of our senior developers to leadership positions. I restructured our sales team to report directly to Sarah instead of to me. The company didn't collapse. If anything, it stabilized. Without Derek pushing for aggressive expansion, we focused on what we did best, building great software and serving our existing clients well. Revenue didn't explode, but it grew steadily, 15% year over year. 6 months after Derek left, I received an envelope at the office. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Marcus, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. What I did was wrong. Not just legally wrong, but morally wrong. I betrayed your trust. I stole from the company we built together. And I justified it with resentment and ego. I've had a lot of time to think about why I did it. The truth is, I was jealous of how much the developers respected you, of how the product was your baby, while sales was just sales, of how you could spend a month perfecting one feature while I had to close deal after deal just to keep up. I convinced myself I deserved more, that I'd earned the right to take what I wanted. But the real truth? I was scared. Scared that if I asked for what I wanted directly, a bigger equity split, more recognition, more control, you'd say no. So I took it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to know that you weren't wrong about me 10 years ago. The person you went into business with did care about building something meaningful. That person just got lost somewhere along the way. I hope the company thrives. I hope you find a partner who deserves your trust. I hope you can look back on the good years without the ending ruining all of it. I'm sorry. Derek, I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in my desk drawer and never responded. Because what was there to say? That I forgave him? I didn't. That I understood? I did. But understanding doesn't erase betrayal. That I missed him? I missed the version of him that existed 10 years ago, but that person was gone. Maybe had been gone for years. A year after Derek left, TechBridge Solutions hit $18 million in annual recurring revenue. We were profitable, stable, and growing. I'd rebuilt what he tried to destroy and done it better. I heard through mutual contacts that Derek had moved to Denver and was working as a sales consultant for a software company. Not an executive role, not a founder, just an employee collecting a paycheck, probably dreaming about what could have been. And me? I was running a company I'd built from nothing, employing 38 people, serving clients across 20 states. I'd won. But sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that dive bar in Austin, about cheap beer and big dreams and a handshake between 2 people who believed they could build something together, about how trust is the easiest thing to lose and the hardest thing to rebuild, about how betrayal in business isn't loud, it's paperwork. They say you should never go into business with friends. That mixing personal relationships with professional ambitions is a recipe for disaster. They're probably right. But here's what they don't tell you. Sometimes the people who betray you teach you the most important lessons. Derek taught me to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, to document everything, to keep my own records, to never assume that someone else has your best interests at heart, even if they say they do. He also taught me that revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be public humiliation or dramatic confrontation. Sometimes the most effective revenge is simply being more prepared than the person trying to destroy you. Derek thought he was robbing me while I slept. What he didn't realize was that I'd been awake for hours, building a cage around him with paperwork and lawyers. By the time he realized he was trapped, it was too late. He thought he was holding the vault. I was already counting the money he'd left behind. So here's my question for you. If your business partner, someone you trusted completely, betrayed you like this, what would you have done? Would you have prosecuted? Would you have destroyed them publicly? Or would you have done exactly what I did? taken everything quietly, and let them walk away with nothing but the knowledge that they destroyed themselves. Because here's what I learned: the best revenge isn't making someone pay. It's making sure they know they could have had everything if they'd just been honest. Making them live with the weight of what they threw away. Derek didn't just lose a company, he lost a partnership, a friendship, a decade of equity that would have made him wealthy. He lost it all chasing a bigger piece of the pie when he could have just asked for more. And me? I got a company worth $18 million, free and clear. I got the satisfaction of knowing I outplayed someone who thought he was smarter than me. I got justice without the mess of criminal prosecution. But I also got something else: loneliness. Because running a company alone isn't the same as building it with someone you trust. The wins aren't as sweet when there's nobody to celebrate with who remembers the early days. The challenges aren't as manageable when there's nobody who shares the weight. That's the cost nobody tells you about. You can win the battle and still lose something important. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Derek made his choice. I made mine. But would I go into business with a friend again? I honestly don't know. What I do know is this: if you're in business with someone, anyone, document everything. Trust your instincts. And remember that the person sitting across from you in that conference room celebrating wins today might be the person trying to rob you tomorrow. Friendship in business is beautiful until it isn't. And when it isn't, you better have receipts. Drop a comment and let me know. Am I wrong for taking everything? Should I have pressed charges? Or did Derek get exactly what he deserved? And if you've got your own business betrayal story, whether you were the one betrayed or the one doing the betraying, I want to hear it. Sometimes the messiest stories teach us the most about human nature. If you want more stories like this, calculated revenge, business betrayals, and the cold reality of what happens when trust dies, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, I've got plenty more where this came from. Remember, in business, loyalty is expensive, but betrayal costs everything. Thanks for watching. Until next time.